Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the 5th annual Cloud 100. My name is Matt Garrett, Managing Partner of Salesforce Ventures, and we're so excited to have you join us today virtually to celebrate the 2020 Cloud 100. Thank you for being here with us today.
And I'm Elliot Robinson, partner at Bessemer Venture Partners. Bessemer and Salesforce Ventures have two of the largest cloud portfolios in the entire VC industry. And for the 5th year in a row, we're excited to partner with our friends at Forbes, a leader in technology and venture capital journalism. Together, we celebrate the industry's success and recognize the leaders who are shaping the cloud-first world we're living in today.
The cloud has really enabled democratization.
I spent incredible amounts of time thinking about this crossing the chasm, problem.
I can't imagine trying to lead an organization through the amount of constant chaos that we're going through right now.
I love the pressure of it. How I handle a certain situation, a certain decision may influence whether we win or lose.
You have peaks and you have valleys, and there is no rule in life that says that every valley must be followed by a peak.
And you learn to be able to be nimble and to pivot.
All of a sudden you realize you're not going to go to New York, you're not going to ring the bell.
There's a lot of advantages to being public.
It doesn't matter how good your product is, you need to have an organization to match it.
That's when you go from customer success driving renewal to customer success accelerating expansion.
You're seen as a trusted advisor where you're helping them do their job better.
It feels like the current wave of rising entrepreneurs are a bit different.
We have incredible opportunity to deliver some change in the world.
I don't think we talk enough about the impact of the developed platforms that we're all building.
Whatever stage I get to, I'm not going to be successful unless I'm bringing other people with me.
You are going to experience all kinds of issues. I think you got to stay true to your company's value.
One of the things I am most focused on is delivering value to customers. Tell them what you're going to do it, and show them that you did it.
Welcome to Cloud 100.
In just a few moments, Forbes will reveal the 2020 Cloud 100 list, the best of the best in cloud, and will be joined by forward-thinking leaders and marquee cloud CEOs such as Eric Yuan of Zoom, Frank Slootman of Snowflake, and Jen Tejada of PagerDuty, alongside all-star athletes Stephen Curry and Baron Davis for some really amazing conversations. A lot has happened since we last celebrated the Cloud 100. We are in an unprecedented time in the midst of several crises at once. A health crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis of racial injustice. Organizations around the world have been forced to reimagine their businesses and how they operate and succeed today in the new normal. Transitions that we thought would take decades are happening right now faster than ever before. This is a very powerful moment for technology to be a force for good, and we've seen Cloud 100 companies and the Cloud 100 community help to usher in this new phase of innovation and growth. For example, when nearly the entire restaurant and hospitality industry had to shut down due to shelter-in-place orders, Toast built new solutions to manage online ordering, contactless delivery, and other solutions to help during these uncertain times. Encino's SBA lending solution helped dozens of banks efficiently provide financing to thousands of small and mid-sized businesses through the Paycheck Protection Program. And how can you not mention Zoom? Zoom has demonstrated the true power of the cloud by facilitating remote work, virtual schooling, and government organizing, and even helped us all during some of life's most precious and sacred moments. Whether that's a birthday celebration, funerals, or even virtual weddings, it's clear that we are truly living in a cloud-first world. Just like we've seen in prior years, companies from the Cloud 100 continue to achieve fantastic success in both large acquisitions and incredibly successful IPOs, including Encino's $2.8 billion IPO, Plaid's $5.3 billion sale to Visa, and Salesforce's strategic acquisition of Velocity for over $1 billion. And of course, a congrats to Snowflake, our first graduate from the 2020 list. Congratulations to all of these Cloud 100 graduates.
And speaking of the publicly traded cloud companies, we are lucky to have the very CEOs who built this market and grew it to what it is today, serving as our Cloud 100 judges. They help us determine who made this year's list. We want to give a special shout out and a big thank you to the CEOs and cloud giants who have given their time and support to participate as our Cloud 100 2020 judges.
And of course, we want to recognize the generosity and support of our event partners for helping us bring these amazing speakers to you live at home today. So, on behalf of Salesforce Ventures, Forbes, and Bessemer Venture Partners, I'd like to give a big thanks to our sponsors. And we pass it over to my friend, Byron Dieter, partner at Bessemer Venture Partners, to give us a state of the cloud industry today. Take it away, Byron.
So before we discuss where the cloud industry is headed, let's first appreciate this journey we've all been on. Just 10 years ago, the entire market capitalization of the public cloud industry totaled just under $40 billion. 5 years later, that scaled up 6x, but still totaled just over $200 billion. Fast forward to the start of this year, and the public cloud market hit a milestone that we'd predicted and all been waiting for. On February 5th, 2020, we surpassed the $1 trillion market capitalization level for the entire cloud industry. This, mind you, is on top of the cloud businesses sitting within the hybrid vendors like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon as well. But little did we know what was just around the corner. Just a few days after hitting that $1 trillion milestone, COVID-19 tore through global communities and economies. In March, we saw the major indices each drop more than 30% over the course of just 3 weeks, and the BVP NASDAQ Emerging Cloud Index tumbled along with it. But then some powerful things in technology started to happen. As the world was forced to leave their offices and stores and schools, they turned to cloud technologies. Solutions like Zoom have given us the connectivity and the ability to communicate with our colleagues, friends, and family. But the same needs existed in the physical world with products. As storefronts were forced to close all over the globe, owners suddenly opened online storefronts to survive. In 1 month alone, between mid-March and mid-April, hundreds of thousands of business owners turned to Shopify to open their first online stores. There are now more than 1 million Shopify stores today, and the usage continues to grow as business owners around the world go global. Businesses also found themselves urgently needing to move global call centers to work-from-home formats, and healthcare providers suddenly needed to accelerate their telehealth operations. Providers like Epic, ZocDot, and Doximity stood up HIPAA-compliant virtual appointments powered by Twilio Video in a matter of weeks. And although the global health crisis remains, cloud companies like these, and all of you, are working harder than ever to keep the economy moving to get through this. And this is reflected in the cloud growth, and adoption, and financials. Companies like Zoom and Twilio and Shopify have grown significantly in the last months in response to this demand. And in aggregate, public cloud markets have pulled away from all the major indices, and the Bessemer BVP NASDAQ Emerging Cloud Index powered well past $1.5 trillion this summer. But you know that the compounding power of cloud has been building for 20 years. And this is now the most powerful force in all of technology. We know where the industry is headed. Cloud is the dark blue on this chart, and you see it gaining pace as a percentage of all software. Cloud will become a majority of all software globally within the next few years, and the vast majority of all software, over 75%, within this decade. Today, we focus on the most selective slice of these private cloud companies, the 100 world-leading, industry-defining, private cloud companies of the Cloud 100. So now my partner Elle is going to give you some more perspective on what it means to make the Cloud 100 list.
Today's event is not just a recognition of where the industry is headed, but a celebration of the new guard of cloud industry leaders and what they've accomplished thus far. We'd like to take a moment to highlight why it's such a significant achievement for any company to make the Cloud 100. Let's dive in. Private cloud valuations are getting bigger and bigger as the market's appetite for cloud companies continues to grow. Over the past 5 years, the average Cloud 100 valuation has grown by a tremendous 2.5x, from $1 billion in 2016 to $2.7 billion in 2020. In addition, the number of unicorns has increased each year. There were 36 unicorns on the Cloud 100 list in 2016, growing to 60 by 2019. And this year alone, we have 87 companies worth more than $1 billion that made the Cloud 100 list. In total, Cloud 100 companies have created an astonishing $450 billion worth of M&A and public market cap value. Now that the IPO window has reopened, we expect to see some major cloud IPOs take place before the end of the year, as we saw recently with Encino, Snowflake, and many other Cloud 100 honorees. Lastly of note, Cloud 100 honorees span 12 different subsectors, from vertical software, enterprise automation, data infrastructure, security, and many more. Interestingly, however, the number of developer platforms, along with collaboration and productivity solutions, saw a 50% increase in representation year over year.
And let me end our State of the Cloud update with two final predictions. Given the accelerated growth of the cloud industry, we expect by the end of next year that we together will be celebrating the public cloud markets hitting the $2 trillion market cap mark. With that in mind, we predict that for next year's Cloud 100 list, it will likely take a $1 billion valuation just to join the Cloud 100 ranks. So for all of you ambitious cloud CEOs out there, you can consider that your target. And we look forward to welcoming you in these ranks in the future years.
We also want to say a big congratulations from all of us
to all of our cloud founders and CEOs who made the 2020 list.
Congratulations on all of your success. Now, on to what we've all been waiting for, 2020's Cloud 100.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of Forbes, Bessemer Venture Partners, and Salesforce Ventures, we are excited to reveal the 5th annual Cloud 100 list, now live today. The definitive ranking of the top private cloud companies in the world. This ranking serves as an industry benchmark and as a testament to the strength of tech's hottest category. Our 2020 Cloud 100 honorees represent a stunning $267 billion in market cap, and 87 of the companies are valued at $1 billion or more. In just a few moments, we'll showcase not only which companies made the top 10 of this year's list, but also highlight a few of its standouts. Let's dive in. The push to online shopping in 2020 amid the pandemic has really boosted digital storefronts, and that's reflected in one of our standout newcomers this year, Checkout.com, which debuts at number 15. In total, we had 27 new companies make the Cloud 100 list this year, and we saw plenty of movement in the top 20. Datadog, one of our top companies last year, went public in September 2019, just after last year's list launch, and graduates off this year's list. Databricks, Canva, and Toast all move up this year into the top 10. And Auth0 moves up 20 slots to slot in at number 19. The biggest movers in the top 20 in this year's Cloud 100 were Asana, Freshworks, and JFrog, all of which moved up 24 slots. Asana, a team management software tool led by Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskovitz, is the subject of our Cloud 100 profile in Forbes for this issue, the anti-Facebook, now available online and in newsstands near you. Some of the list's other biggest movers include Guild Education, which jumped 40 slots, and Pendo, which jumped 41. EdTech company Guild slots in this year at number 46, while Pendo in product analytics slots in at 54. Now let's talk about the top 10, the breakout companies in the Cloud 100 list. Boston-based Toast is valued at nearly $5 billion, providing software for restaurants, who can use all the help they can get right now. In data management, Silicon Valley-based Rubrik stays in the top 10, as its valuation has passed $3 billion. The subject of our 2018 Cloud 100 profile, Santa Barbara area-based Procore, stays in the top 10 for its construction management software. I've written a lot about Canva and Melanie Perkins, slotting in at number 7. Learn more about how Melanie built a global design software leader from Sydney, Australia, facing long odds in our December 2019 Forbes print cover story. We profiled Confluent way back in 2015. Now it's valued at more than $4.5 billion, and its data streaming software is powering some of the internet's most important websites. Based in San Francisco, Databricks is another data unicorn with an eye-popping valuation and the growth to match. The company is now valued at more than $6 billion. Open source darlings HashiCorp have grown a ton since founders Mitchell Hashimoto and Armin Dadgar made our Forbes 30 Under 30 list for 2017. Their business is now valued at more than $5 billion. Founded in Bucharest and now based in New York City, UiPath, the subject of our 2019 Forbes Cloud 100 cover story, has turned RPA, robotic process automation, into a more than $10 billion valuation. Despite continuing to be a leader in the payment space, our long-running number 1, Stripe, gives up that spot for this year and slots in at number 2. We have a new number 1 after 3 years. It's data infrastructure company Snowflake. But Snowflake may not be atop the list for too long. Back in June, it filed registration to go public, likely later this year. Each year, it gets tougher to crack into the ranks of the Cloud 100. So this is a great achievement not just for the top 20 companies, but for the full 100 companies on the list, as well as the 20 younger breakout companies on our Rising Stars list. To dive into the full 2020 Cloud 100 list, please go to Forbes.com/Cloud100. Check out our interactive lander for breakouts of the companies by category, highlights of some of this year's standout companies, and much, much more. Be sure to join me and former NBA All-Star Baron Davis as we talk to several past and present Rising Star entrepreneurs who represent the new face of this important category. Congratulations to all 100 companies on the Cloud 100 list. We hope you enjoy the rest of the Cloud 100 event.
I'm Jen Tejada, the CEO of PagerDuty.
I'm Eric, CEO of Zoom.
I'm Frank Slootman, CEO of Snowflake.
Stephen Curry with the Golden State Warriors and founder of SC38. Welcome to Cloud 100. Really excited to have this opportunity. So let's get into the first question. And I guess I'll ask the three amazing CEOs that we have with us today. We know 2020 has kind of presented a host of problems and issues, but also opportunities. What's been the hardest lesson you've learned this year specifically with everything that you've had to adjust to during the year?
Well, I'll take a crack at that, Stefan. Thank you. I think the first challenge was just the sheer volume and diversity of unprecedented problems and challenges that we've never seen before, all coming at us in a very short time period earlier this year when COVID-19 hit. And then dealing with the associated market volatility and economic environment that followed on the back of a global pandemic, that would keep any CEO pretty busy. I've found that we've really had to expand our leadership beyond customers and employees and partners to all of our stakeholders and think first about keeping people safe, second about how we can leverage our voices, our platforms, our products, and our technology to try and help stop the spread of COVID and help solve for unemployment and joblessness and some of the challenges that we've seen arise. And third, for me, what I've found is being values-driven has served as an advantage. It's been really important to really understand and listen to our people and to our customers and empathize with what they're going through and note that every single person is experiencing this environment and this pandemic a little differently. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to the set of challenges that we have.
I'm actually amazed how well it has worked, and we sort of learned a whole bunch of new lessons in the process. But what was incredibly important is that as a company, if you were more structured, more institutionalized about how you get through the day, in other words, having your set meetings, your set check-ins, standard processes. But I will tell you that in the beginning, we all thought this is going to be a matter of weeks and months. And of course, we're now 4 or 5 months into it with no end in sight. But we've also much more settled in as a group and as an organization. So we think we can keep this up. Hopefully not indefinitely, but we would and we could if we had to.
I think for us, Zoom's challenge is about how to serve those totally unexpected first-time users. Given that so many new use cases, from online yoga class, telemedicine, online classes, wedding ceremony. There's so many new use cases. How to keep the service up? And it's full of uncertainty. Our team got to work so hard. Also, I had more sleepless nights than any time before. And the good news, our investment on culture is well paid off. And no one at Zoom complained. We do all we can to truly care about every user. Think about how to truly deliver happiness to all those users all over the globe. And that's a lesson learned. And think about customer, think about employees, you'll be okay.
A big challenge just in terms of when it comes to our SC38, we're not on any level like Frank, Jennifer, and Eric, but in terms of it being a really startup kind of culture with a small roster, trying to keep the chemistry and the culture of how we operate, kind of to Frank's point around when you're not in person and having those that connection, face to face, especially in the early days. That was a challenge, and I think a big part of it is how you balance, the disciplines of your day to day, knowing that everybody has their specific roles and ways to impact, the direction of what we're trying to do. And for us, staying true to that is the most important thing we can, no matter what the medium is, whether it's a Zoom call or an email or whatever the case is. That communication is extremely important, and that's something that you have to continue to develop no matter what the circumstances are.
So Stefan, you are a world-class athlete. As a tech, company CEO, I can tell you, in addition to keep working hard to make our business successful, also have a dream. If I can have a side dream, I want to be your teammate. You are not only a world-class athlete, a great leader. I think my friend, Andre Iguodala, he speaks very highly about you as a great teammate, great leader, wonderful father. And also a lot of people may not know that. You're also the founder of SC30. I really want to understand how you learn from your experience time on the basketball court to building a successful business.
Sports teaches you so much about the discipline to be able to be collaborative, the ability to work in a team environment, to hold your own weight, to be inspired and motivated by the other people around you. But the one piece that I've learned just in how we've had success, especially with the Warriors, is high character, high quality, good people, first and foremost, that they fill the locker room. Everybody vibes off of that energy. And when you set a certain mission and goal, everybody buys into it, no matter what their role is, no matter how many minutes they play, no matter what they're getting paid. It's about them feeling valued in the process. And so if you can find as many people that measure up to that, and the leaders exemplify that with everything that they do, for us, that's what the secret sauce to success. You obviously have to have talent and you have to have skill and expertise, but without, good people that can work together, can be collaborative, that share in that same value kind of driven process, then you're going to hit more speed bumps than successes in our world.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Culture is really the only thing that's uniquely yours. Companies have access to talent, they have access to capital, they have access to anything, but the only thing that's uniquely you is your culture, right? So if you're not driving your culture, with very, very explicit expectations and objectives, what you get is what people import from their prior companies, right? And it may not be what you want, probably isn't what you want, right? And it also becomes sort of a mix of all different kinds of styles and different organizations and different locations and so on. So if you're not getting after a culture, you're just defaulting to a mode of operation that is going to be highly suboptimal because it can be a one-man or a one-woman mission.
Yeah, that totally resonates with me. I think culture is defined by the lowest level of behavior you're willing to tolerate. And so, Frank, when you mention expectations, I think it's so important to articulate to your team and to your employees, what are the behaviors that exemplify the values that you hold true? And how do you expect employees, no matter what they're doing, where they are, to demonstrate those values day in and day out? And I think that's incredibly important in times of stress and times when we're surrounded by a lot of uncertainty. I think values can be, sort of the foundation that helps you weather any uncertain storm, but likewise thrive in an environment like this. And I can't imagine trying to lead an organization through the amount of just change and constant chaos that we're going through right now without a very strong set of values that kind of bond us all together. Well, Frank, it's been a momentous year for Snowflake. With everything that you've experienced and that's happened this year, can you talk about your leadership approach? Because you've done this a few times before.
I am incredibly focused on the mission. I don't tolerate distraction very well. And to stick with the sports metaphors, it's not uncommon in sports to see a team go from a losing season to a winning season, literally in 1 year with the same roster. So an enormous amount of progress can be made by the whole mental discipline, the mental focus that we have on the job. And there is this intangible quality in organizations that can be tapped, if once you sort of get a sense of how you get to go after it. And we've done that at Snowflake. And obviously it's a sensational platform, but it doesn't matter how good your product is. You need to have an organization to match it.
And what advice would you give to CEOs or founders on how to increase the pace of innovation?
Well, I talk about this all the time. In the world of tech, if you're not intensely focused on your product, right, you haven't figured out yet what really matters. And product is the only thing that matters in our world, right? Looking for opportunities to reinvent, having extremely high standards. I'm still inspired every single day by the late Steve Jobs, who always said, it has to be insanely great or I'm going to be completely disinterested. He actually had more colorful language than what I just used. But in other words, it had to totally inspire, otherwise I'm not interested, right? So innovation is about setting extremely high standards for your product.
I'd like to toss it to Eric. We know in 2020 how a lot of people have been able to stay connected. If you haven't used your product through this last 6 months, then you might be living under a rock. So I just, in terms of your company and how you deal with this massive growth and scale, like how do you balance that as a leader of such a massively scaling company?
Stephen, that's a great question. I would say the number one thing is back to what Frank said. The product is the number one important thing. When it comes to product, architecture is a foundation. From our perspective, we feel very proud about our architecture. So Stephen, very similar to your half-court 3-point. And we feel very proud about our architecture. We work so hard because without that, your product really will have a problem when you have a massive growth. And also during this massive growth, for sure, you are going to experience all kinds of issues. I think you got to stay true to your company's value and culture and keep everything open and transparent. As a team, we got to realize the number one important thing is how to think about everything from a customer perspective in terms of quickly innovate or offer the free service to some K-12 schools and to show our care to the community, to society. Let everyone at Zoom feel like they are part of the big dream. And that's very important for us to capture this massive growth.
Can you give us maybe an insight on how you prioritize those decisions or how you stay focused through what is probably some immense chaos when you're in these type of times?
How to prioritize is really the key to success. For me, whenever there's a very complex problems, I'd like to get our team together, and not only for me and trust my team, and also put all the problems on the table and look at why we have this problem. What's the root cause?
I'd love to ask a quick question of Stefan because I get to talk to Jennifer and Eric regularly, but I never get to talk to Stefan.
I won't take offense to that, Frank.
So may never get that opportunity again. But the thing that I always take away from watching your play is, first of all, you're not the biggest guy on the court. You're probably a big guy, but you don't look big on the court because these other guys are so huge. And you have this uncanny ability to electrify the team. I mean, you put them into a different mode, like an insane mode or whatever you want to call it. And marshaling that quality in yourself is what leaders have to do anywhere, right? And how do you do that? I mean, what is there a switch?
It's a great question because a part of it's very natural in terms of how I enjoy the game, how I enjoy the ups and downs of being in that leadership role. I love the pressure of it. I love being in that moment where, you know, how I handle a certain situation, a certain decision may influence whether we win or lose. My coach from my college, Davidson College, he always told me, you know, help somebody, you help yourself. And in terms of the power in the collective of when I'm on my game and I'm making all the right decisions and I'm executing my style to the best of my ability, that makes everybody else look amazing, which then in turn is going to allow me to do what I do best. And so my role has changed so much from, you know, 10 years ago to now. And I think I mean, you guys can probably speak to that as well in terms of as your companies have grown, there's just different demands, but, you know, the process of it, if you figure that out, that stays the same.
No, it's amazing to watch.
Stefan, let's switch gears towards a topic that I know all of us are very passionate about, and that's the impact that our companies can have on our teams, our customers, and beyond. And you spoke earlier with Frank about, you know, trying to bring out the best in those around you when you're on the court or in the office. But I also know that you have a unique perspective as someone who's very committed to supporting social causes and social movements. What do you think the role of leaders and teams and corporations is in terms of thinking about supporting social causes or supporting activation in social movements? What role should a leader be playing there?
A big role, I think, in terms of, one, be authentic. I think people can weed through when you feel like you're forced to do something or forced to speak on something. And it's okay to take your time to, one, understand what the right way to be involved and participate is. For me, the rule is make sure you're knowledgeable on what you're talking about, but make sure you have something to add to the conversation, something to kind of influence change in a material way. And again, it's that authenticity and being genuine about that process. Because I know we all have a lot to offer in terms. I think you spoke about it earlier in terms of, you know, being thoughtful about the resources that you have that you can deploy and the way that your company can solve some tough issues through this pandemic. And leaders have to be accountable to that process to hold their employees, their entire company to that standard. Be consistent with that, but be authentic.
I think I agree with you 100%. Making sure that you put actionable and measurable goals in place and checking the progress on those things as you go, just like you would any other business imperative, is critical, because I think employees can get behind you and it engenders a lot of trust when you demonstrate that you actually want to see outcomes as opposed to, you know, just be a voice in the narrative. Since you started your own company, how has your perspective evolved on leadership and your role in driving social causes and social movements forward? Has it changed?
It hasn't changed, but I feel like the perspective of how to move within that purpose has changed, if that makes sense. So it's about, I've always had that on the radar and trying to find ways, especially when it comes to speaking for people that can't speak for themselves or finding ways to create opportunities for people that wouldn't otherwise have them. That's always been a mission of how we thought about any opportunity that we kind of commit to or start, or any idea or vision that we set for what we're doing. But I think in terms of having those tough conversations, getting outside your comfort zone a little bit, and then holding other people that you're connected to accountable to that same mission has become more and more consistent, and I think received a lot better than years past. And that's, you know, an inflection point, obviously 3-4 months ago, when talking about what racial injustices that are going on in our country and representation in many different industries, and creating more pipelines to get more diversity within, you know, high leadership positions, but in companies overall. So I have a unique ability, I think, to bring awareness to certain conversations and issues when it comes to that, and hopefully be better at connecting the dots to make meaningful, long-lasting change. So
that's great. And I think, it's been really incredible to watch you go from being a role model for athletes and kids on the basketball court to setting a great example for all of us as leaders in taking a strong position and advocating for change that, to your point, is really important and really timely in these moments. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I have a lot to learn from the people that are doing it well and have an ability to kind of see the landscape as a whole. It's been really awesome to see the participation across the board of people in very powerful positions that have access to everything that we need for change to get involved in the fight. So that's meaningful in and of itself to watch, that take place more and more. And the long-term effects of what that'll be will be amazing to know we were a part of.
Companies are microcosms of society, right? And when you get big enough, and I've certainly experienced that in prior lives, sooner or later you'll inherit all the problems of society in your company. And it's just a numbers game when that happens. So when you're running a company, you're basically setting out to be much better than society as a whole, because you have a much smaller group of people, obviously, and you have far greater influence and control in driving, a culture, that is much more the way it should be, as opposed to, what happens in society at large. And I think that's a great opportunity. And when we talk about culture, it's not just about performance. It's about behavior. And it's like, how do we get along, right? That's an enormous opportunity. I mean, we get to set the standard for conduct and behavior and how people come together on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's one of the great attractions, I think, of running companies.
I agree with that. And I'd add that when you're a growth company, you have an even bigger opportunity to design the complexion of your company. As you're adding headcount, it's much easier to be intentional and programmatic around how you build the tapestry of talent within your organization than when you're in a slower growing, more static company or, to your point, broader society. And so I think it's a privilege to lead, but it's also a responsibility on our part to build organizations that sort of represent what we want the future to look like, as opposed to just incrementally improve on the past.
So Jen, you have a great reputation as a great leader in the CEO community. I can tell you, actually, we all feel very lucky to know you because you truly care about others. Whenever we need any help, you proactively help others, help me. And also PagerDuty has a great reputation to have such an inclusive culture. During this pandemic crisis, quite often you hire employees, how to onboard them is totally different. How do you cultivate the same sense of a community during this working from home and full of uncertainty time?
Yeah, well, it's not easy. And I think anybody who tells you it is easy is lying or not paying attention. But, one, it starts with intent. Like, we believe that we will get the best out of our people and that we'll reflect the communities we serve the most effectively if we are intentionally inclusive, if we create a culture that is welcoming and helps individuals and teams develop a sense of belonging very quickly. We believe that the best ideas come from diverse teams and people from different backgrounds, so we proactively seek both diverse leaders at the board level as well as at our management level, but throughout every level in the organization. And since we moved to working from home environment and almost a default digital environment, it's been harder, but we've had to find new ways to demonstrate empathy, to role model vulnerability, because vulnerability in groups leads to trust, and trust is a super important element of creating a culture of belonging. Things that I've had to change myself as a leader to really try and continue to create that inclusive feeling within the company is to be much more visible, frequently on videos, doing Ask Me Anythings. But I also can't underscore the importance of the more casual, spontaneous check-ins, like really just picking up the phone and calling a team member, checking in, doing a skip level, just to see how someone is doing, and not asking about the business, but asking, how are you? Like, how are you feeling? How's your family? How's the transition been? what are you working on? What is most important to you? How can I be helpful to you? Because I think 4 or 5 months into this, we're all experiencing a little fatigue. But also we've programmatically built creating a culture of belonging into the onboarding process. So it's not enough to just have a balanced and diverse slate. It's not enough to just have a balanced interview screening panel. You also have to make sure that once an employee receives a job offer in the business, that their experience in getting to know the business and getting up and running within your teams is also inclusive. And then there's just the constant reminding of your employees and your team to look out for each other. I feel like every town hall, every conversation that we're having, I'm saying to the team, hey, if you haven't called someone today to check in on them, the person that you used to bump into at the coffee machine or the person you used to Slack with first thing in the morning, check in on them today, because mental health issues in this environment are real. We have no idea, what they're going through. And so making sure that there are multiple layers of folks within your teams checking in on each other is really important. And the last thing I would just add is that we're always playing the long game. Like, we're always looking at what can we learn from what's happened? What's our vision 2 or 3 years from now? And what are we going to go do right now to make that happen? If you want to create a culture of belonging, then you better fund it. You better be prepared to have someone who's responsible for driving it, and you need to make it the job of every leader in the business to ensure that those programs get executed throughout their organization. So consistency and standing behind that with resources really matters.
Awesome. Super awesome. Very, very excited. Thank you. Thank you.
So there will be hopefully a ton of CEOs watching this segment. And if you could impart just one thing, not 5 things, not 3 things, just one thing in what you think they have to know. It doesn't have to be, specific to COVID and all that stuff. Let's have a bigger view of things. What is that one nugget you want to drop in their lap? Like, this is valuable. This is important. This is what I want to pass on. So you got to do it in like 10 seconds. Just kidding. I'll start, okay? And you guys can think about it. One of the things the conversation I always have with other CEOs, especially the younger ones, and there's a lot of young whippersnappers these days, as CEOs, it's amazing how young they are. They get younger every day, it seems. But, something will happen as a CEO. You will be confronted with the need for transformation of the business. The question is, are you going to recognize it? Are you going to recognize it in time? Because eventually everybody will recognize it. So the timing is really important, right? And then related to that, the third thing is, can you execute on it? And I've lived through episodes of where I recognized it, where I didn't recognize it, and where I didn't recognize it in time, and also situations where I couldn't execute on it. And I tell you what, as a CEO, I lose enormous amount of sleep, and I am enormously paranoid about, am I seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing? Am I reading it? Am I reading it correctly, right? And but the question really is, you got to have your antenna out all the time, this paranoia about, am I correctly parsing what is happening out there? And I think it's a very important question. I mean, your team, they have their heads down. They're not the ones that are necessarily thinking along this line. It's only you as the CEO that needs to be hyper alert, to what is going on that is going to force transformation. It can be traumatic. It can be just life changing, and it's one of my favorite conversations because it will test you to the absolute core of your being as a CEO, right?
That is well said. I would say, I don't even know how to follow that up because that was, might be in the middle of that right now, but in terms of like when you have the decision that you need to be making, the collaborative process of gathering all the pertinent information, that however long that process does take, the decision part, and you come up with a decision, the execution needs to be quick and swift and fast so that you don't, lose any momentum on that end. And your conviction around it is you're the only one that's accountable to it. So, you have to kind of go with it and do it quickly and swiftly and with the strategy that you put in place. And then there's also obviously the trust that, the talent that you have in your team and whatnot will be able to go out and execute it right there with you. So,
Frank, my short answer to that question is that write down your company's culture and value, make it very simple, very catchy, keep investing on that, and just keep talking about that, and your investment will be very well paid off, in particular in tough times.
And I would add to that to choose your partners wisely. I mean, we're only as good as the people we are surrounding ourselves by, and I think that to your point, Frank, sometimes the world is transforming and the business is transforming, and you have to change your partners out, and that's one of the most painful challenges in scaling a company. You know, leveling and recognizing when you need to make a change, and I think we've all learned from the hard mistake of not moving on an instinct soon enough, not bringing in the talent you needed early enough. You are never, ever done building a team. In high growth, there's this forming, storming, norming thing. You're never getting to norming. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be forming, storming, going back to forming, storming again, so to speak, because of the growth curve and the opportunity that's in front of you. So choose your partners wisely. This has just been an incredible conversation. I feel so fortunate to have been able to spend the last several minutes with three wonderful leaders in Stefan, Frank, and Eric. I wish the very best for all of the CEOs and founders that have tuned in to watch the Cloud 100 this year. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of my favorite must-read books is called The Growth Handbook by Elad Gil.
The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey Jr.
Ooh, I'm currently reading Punished by Rewards, which is a really interesting book about how we think about incenting the behaviors and the outcomes that we're looking for.
Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell.
5 dysfunctions of a team. At least for me, I figured out I had all 5 of them, but it's a really useful book for building teams.
I really enjoyed reading 4 Steps to Epiphany by Steve Blank.
Underrated is a book called Play Bigger, which is about how you define a market category.
I still love Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm.
Reading Bob Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime.
Founders at Work by Jessica Livingston.
I love Let My People Go Surfing, written by the founder of Patagonia.
My daily habit is to wake up and work out.
Probably feeding my cat in the morning.
I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for from the previous day.
Meditating for 10 to 15 minutes a day is a great daily habit. I don't hit it every day, but I'm better on all the days I do.
Making a list.
I love making breakfast for my kids in the morning, so it's a rotation of French toast, pancakes, oatmeal, and kind of keeps me grounded for the day ahead.
I need to lift something heavy.
I pretend to walk to the office. I brew coffee, I put it in a to-go mug, and I walk around the block.
I get exercise early in the morning outside every day.
I try to get to 20,000 steps a day.
At least 30 minutes of me time, whatever that is.
Be outside and enjoy the day.
I think as a founder, CEO, executive, you have to fire yourself every 6 months or a year, and then write a job description for what the company requires at that point and see if you can meet that job.
Being able to throw things out no matter how much time or energy you've invested in them.
Curiosity.
Humility.
Intellectual honesty.
The ability to deal with failure again and again.
You got to be resilient.
Listen and be able to pivot.
Cheerleading others.
Communication.
Storytelling. That's an easy one. Storytelling.
I think empathy is very underrated.
It's to truly and genuinely value your people. If you trust them 100%, they will do great things for you.
Hi, I'm Karen Peacock, and I'm the CEO of Intercom.
Hi, I'm Nick Maida, CEO of Gainsight.
Hi, I'm Manny Medina. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Outreach.
Well, Manny and Karen, it's so awesome having you here to have a discussion about how we all run our businesses and what we've all learned over the years. There's so much to talk about. I think one of the things that might be helpful for everyone is to start with the strategy about how we all thought about go-to-market. And from my own vantage point, I think we all read all the time about product market fit. It's probably the biggest buzzword in the drinking game of SaaS. Is if you do a shot every time you hear product market fit, you'll probably be drunk by noon. That product market fit concept, in my opinion, sometimes hides the fact that the founding team and the executive team, their own background might influence what type of product, what type of market, what type of go-to-market you go after. Some founders might be really into technology and products, some might be into customers. And so I'd be really interested in how you think the DNA of your team, in terms of both the founding team, the current team, affected how you decided where to focus in your market.
Our founding team is a group of folks who are highly focused on building great products. And so Intercom started out as a product-first company, really for other startups. And that has stayed very much in our DNA of being a product-first company. And then over the years, we've built out our go-to-market motion. But we started with great products and really no specific go-to-market other than like the word of mouth of having a great product. We started then by adding in great content, and we used that to drive basically inbound demand. But in a way, that content was really just another form of a product that we were delivering and giving to folks. And then it wasn't until a few years after that, we really started building out our sales and marketing motion, building out a combination of inbound and outbound. So we really started with product and built up from there. And we've steadily moved up market through the years as well, starting with more selling to very small businesses. And now we very much sell to mid-market and enterprise companies.
I think it's super interesting because I could imagine an alternate universe Intercom that had founders that were more about sales and meeting people that wouldn't have started the same way you did. So that the team dynamic kind of influenced the early path. Did that make it harder later on to then adopt those other motions that you had to bring in as you came in, or what was that like as the business evolved itself?
So I joined Intercom about 3 years ago, and when I first joined, I was hearing things from the sales team like, hey, we're asking the product teams to build certain things, and they're not necessarily building those things. That's kind of a classic conflict there.
Yeah.
And the aha that we had was to connect our product teams to customers and to share with our product teams the problems to be solved, not the solution. So rather than saying like, I need a feature X, I need like ticketing, I need to be able to solve complex workflows where I can break down a customer ask into these different pieces and get that information back to them. And then connecting the product teams with customers was a massive unlock for us and really, really helped us scale as a upmarket company that we are today.
That's awesome. So there's kind of like identifying where you started and who you are and focusing there, and then figuring out how you get connected to the new things you want to do in a way that's authentic to your company. I think that's a really good lesson for people watching. Manny, I think you probably had a different story of kind of how you got started. So how did your own personality, your kind of co-founders and executive team personality influence where you decided to focus in the market and how you kind of got started?
Yeah, we are a little different in that we were a pivot. So we didn't come out to the product that originally was Outreach. We had a separate product that didn't do so well. So we were a little reticent to assume anything about our product or our product market fit. So we found product market fit by selling it. So the way we built the product, and then I would spend all day meeting people face to face in the SOMA and selling door to door to startups there, and making sure that whatever I had in the truck was meeting their expectation. And I would take a copious notes. Even if I sold you something, I would put it aside and being like, all right, why do you buy? Did the story resonate? And then I would go back to my co-founders and say, we need to double down on this, we need to double down on something else. And then use that relationship to continue to build the product roadmap. So a lot of our product roadmap was influenced by early customers. So I remember Scott Wong and Sahil from a company called Virule that doesn't exist anymore, that sort of gave us all the input that we needed to create this sort of like dynamic template. And then by working with Lars Nielsen and with Kiran Singh at Cloudera, they gave us the idea of a lot of the triggering and sort of like Salesforce Sync functionality that we built. So a lot of the features actually have customers behind it. You see what I mean? And our roadmap is just a lot of those stringing them together. The thing that was really palpable to me was that later I found that there was a term for this. It's called sales-ready product. And it was interesting when you hear about sales-ready product versus MVP, is that a sales-ready product has managed to shorten the amount of story and the amount of product you have to show to complete a sale.
That's awesome. It's so cool to hear two really different stories of kind of how Intercom got started, how Outreach got started, which I think are both equally valid. A very product kind of internal focus, and then a kind of building it with the customers and making it sales ready. When you're in that fork, because I think some people watching might be at that fork, you did this incredible, one-to-one selling that's truly inspirational, and then now you're seeing these company level deals. Did you worry that, hey, there's going to be opportunity for somebody else to sell the bottoms up user by user model?
It did, and it has. We're very exposed in the lower end of the market. And we're now to a point in which we almost look like we have two businesses. We have a mid-market and sort of corporate and above business, and then we have a corporate and below business, and they have vastly distinct characteristics. One has relatively high churn. The expansion is a lot more beta. Has a much higher beta. The other one is a lot more repeatable, and you have to optimize each of them separately.
And it's interesting because we've gone through the same dynamic, but with maybe a slightly different shape of the market. Like in my opinion, all markets have a shape, and some markets tend to be more top heavy, meaning more of the profit and revenues in the top companies, and some tend to be more of a long tail where a lot of the profits in the long tail. I think our value prop, which obviously helps companies, with their customers, keep their customers, grow them. By definition, it's more valuable the more customers and revenue you have. And so when you're a young company, you want to sell a lot, you want to market a lot, but you don't actually have that many customers. So honestly, a solution on Gatesite is moderately useful, but what we find is it's existential for these mid to large size companies. So for us, we actually pretty early on were like, we're going to make our money off the mid-market and enterprise, and that's kind of what ended up happening and shaping us, which, as you said, has pros and cons to it. Karen, I think Intercom's story is pretty different in terms of sort of the bottoms up versus top down. You want to click into what you've seen there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see themes from what both of you have talked about with conversations we've had at Intercom as well, as you might imagine. One of the things that I am most focused on, period, is delivering value to customers, and very, very much being clear to customers on tell them what you're going to do it, and show them that you did it. And that is kind of the way that we've moved really from the bottom up market. And what we found is not dissimilar to what you talked about at Gainsight. Larger companies, because they have many, many customers that they deal with and large volumes there, that get so much value from Intercom that it does drive up ACVs in a pretty big way. And so we've been seeing massive traction in that mid-market and enterprise at Intercom. In fact, over the last 8 quarters, we beat every single one of our upmarket goals on the sales side, wow. Including even beating all of our goals there from pre-COVID. So we're seeing we're generating a ton of value up there. And at the same time, we are very much dedicated to also continuing a self-serve business for the right, very small businesses. So one of the things that has worked well for us there is we have an early stage program where we work with different incubators and others who work with early stage companies and help them get started using Intercom, get value early, and then we have much lower price points there, and we really try to align our price to the value that our customers get, and also try to then align the sales motion to that value. You obviously can't spend thousands and thousands of dollars acquiring a customer who's going to pay you $100 a month. So it has to be a very different motion that you use for the high end. And in fact, a mid-market enterprise customer almost will never want to buy on a self-serve, put my credit card in type of contract. So having the right sales motion that's aligned to the customer segment that you're going after is really important, and then aligning that price to value.
I think it's great advice. I think that either you do that or you have Manny sell every user one by one, which I would take that. Man, I think Manny, if you could sell all the Gatesite users one by one, I'll sign you up. The last thing I have, we'll just do a super quick lightning, just one tip for getting outside of Silicon Valley in terms of customer base? Because all of us, I think many startups, Gainsight, probably Outreach, and Intercom, you start with other tech people and all that, and you expand outside of Silicon Valley. And what's something that you think might be helpful? I'll share one to start, which is, I think a lot of people either read Crossing the Chasm or know the concept, Jeffrey Moore's seminal book, and he's actually spent some time with us as an advisor. And one of the things he's always emphasized is those people on the left side of the chasm buy because they want to be innovative, they want to be different, they want to be leaning forward. And as you get further along, people buy based on fear, based on what other people are doing. And so really learning to tweak the marketing message, I think, is an interesting one as you think about going outside of tech. Karen, how about from your vantage point?
Yeah, I'll share 2 pieces of advice. First of all, if you want to have a global business, have a global team. If you've got 100% of your team sitting in Silicon Valley, you're probably going to have a very Silicon Valley-based business. So just think about that. Intercom from the start has been about 50% of our team outside the US, and not surprisingly, half of our revenue is also outside of the US.
That's interesting.
Second thing I'd say is really think about the verticals that you go after. So think about what the core vertical is that you're starting with. And for Intercom and probably for both of your companies as well, you started very much with tech companies. And then think about what are the other verticals, what are additional verticals that have that same set of problems that you could solve uniquely well. And then go after them vertical by vertical, come up with tailored demos for those customers. Once you win one, that's a case study for you, and land and expand from there. So vertical by vertical, really focusing on where is there an important unmet customer problem that you can solve well.
Great. Manny, any quick advice?
Yeah, from my end, the first thing that we fix is make sure that your value delivery has a very short timeline, meaning to go from 0 to ROI is measuring weeks, not in months. And then once you have that nailed and it's very repeatable and you can point to it at all times, then you do what Karen just said, which is look for adjacent verticals in your space where you can deliver value, so as opposed to just going nilly-willy. I spent incredible amounts of time thinking about this crossing the chasm problem. And what I found is that each sort of industry and even each country has its own crossing the chasm moment in which there are people who are inspired by what you have delivered for others that they want to try it.
That's very well said.
Karen, I'm really interested in hearing, given that you are in the conversation space, what are the different strategies around these conversations and around meeting customers where they are that you have seen succeed at Intercom?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk maybe about 2 different areas, conversational marketing and conversational support. And maybe just to step back for a second, why is this important now? Why is it coming up now? And you've seen a real trend toward real-time, personalized, one-to-one interactions. We all see it and expect it in our lives as consumers. Like when you're going to reach out to a friend or a family member, odds are you're going to text them. You're not going to send them an email. You probably won't even send them a phone call. You certainly won't send them a letter. You're expecting something like real-time and conversational. And the same thing is happening on the business side. And so customers are increasingly expecting those same kind of real-time, personalized, conversational relationships with businesses as they do with other consumers. Conversational support is probably exactly what you would expect as well, and that is a fundamentally new way of delivering customer support. And if you think about kind of the traditional ways that companies deliver support today, it's using something like an email-based tool or a form-based tool where you submit something in and you're like, I'm not really sure when I'll hear back on this, and maybe you do hear back a day or 2 later and it's a question followed by another question and you're like, okay, well that didn't actually answer my thing. and there's this like really laggy, asynchronous, like pretty bad process.
When you deliver a better in the moment, meet you where you are experience as a customer, what is the change, the pre-post? Like what happens after you start delivering, more in time, more personalized support, and how does that tie to success? And then how does that tie to the long-term value of that customer over time?
Intercom's got about 30,000 customers, and for all of our customers that use conversational marketing to engage prospects on their websites, when they do, it increases their conversion rates by 82%. So So massive increase in conversion by meeting customers where they are, which makes perfect sense. On the support side, we see huge increases in customer support, satisfaction, and efficiency as well. One of our utilities companies saw a 70% increase in customer support efficiency. So basically a 70% decrease in costs from using a conversational support solution. So it both is higher conversion rates, higher satisfaction, and higher efficiency.
And then Nick, what does it do to LTV if you bring in, that kind of support and stepping up your game in customer success? What does it do to your economics?
Yeah, it's interesting because when we, a lot of these terms can feel a little confusing. Customer success, customer support, customer experience, all these things. I think to an outsider that's not super nerdy about it like me and Karen, it might be a little confusing. So the way we like to describe it is we draw this equation to continue the nerdiness, and we say CS equals, customer success equals CO plus CX. The CO is getting the customer to the outcomes they're looking for, because nobody buys a B2B product just to have fun. They're trying to do something. Outreach helps them grow sales, and the conversational support helps them make their customers happier. What's the outcome? And then CX is what's the experience. And so fundamentally, customer success is about getting your customers the outcomes they're looking for with a good experience, right? And that then, as you know very well, Manny, drives that lifetime value for the customer. Like one of our customers is Splunk, and they basically, I think a lot of people know Splunk, and there's a lot of ways you can use Splunk, a lot of different use cases, security, operations, at the end, and they get paid based on the amount of data that's in Splunk. And so they want to accelerate that flywheel by customer buys for a use case, they deliver that use case, customer buys for more use cases, just like you talked about with your time to value and outreach. And so in Splunk's case, you can check out the stock, they've done incredibly well by just accelerating that flywheel through a good experience and through good outcomes.
Those are two terrific areas to be talking about there, Nick and Manny. But the third area on my mind is around expansion. And this is basically building on all of the relationships of the customers that you brought in the past. One of my very favorite SaaS metrics is net dollar retention, and thinking about the inherent growth of your existing customer base that you get through retention, driving great upsell and cross-sell, and I think is a measure of a great SaaS business. So would love to switch over a little bit and talk more about both growth and expansion.
It's a really interesting topic right now in the moment of COVID, because as you know, with the economy being a little uncertain, existing customers is your new logo, meaning you're not gonna be hunting for new customers, all that much as you are expanding on the customers that you have that are either getting tailwinds because of COVID or at least got a strong balance sheet and they can continue to invest. So from an outreach perspective, the customer engagement is about maintaining that relationship with the customer in a way that you're listening to their needs, you're listening to where they're growing, you are anticipating where the next problem is going to be. And I think there is here at Outreach we have an entire sort of customer maturity model where we track their activities. So we look at what are they doing on the platform, and we anticipate when are they going to hit a plateau in terms of production and productivity, and then we intervene to teach him the new parts of outreach that can give him to the next level of productivity and to the next level of production. And by continuously monitoring the customer and continuously driving the conversation as to how do you get better today, and continues to challenge yourself to say, what have you done for me lately? You continue to put yourself in front of the customer and driving that next new value, next new expansion for us, but next new value generation for them. And the ROI is a continuously moving curve, which is not just what you deliver, after you deploy, but it's what you continue to deliver every year for them. I think also for companies like yours as well, and Nick's is, you also have a product pipeline, and that product pipeline continues to build into your customer relationship. So as long as you're developing and deploying products that the customer is seeing quick ROI out of, then you not only get ROI out of original deployment, but you continue to get ROI out of the innovations that you're bringing out to market, and then you deliver on your, on your conversational intelligence, on your conversational support, and then you continue to deliver on the what's next after that, and the different channels of communication, et cetera. So for us, it's the ability to see the customer not only where they are right now, but where they're going to be, and anticipating those needs and continue to deliver against that. In my mind, that's great customer engagement.
In the old world, we could divide the world into like pre-sales and post-sales, and you could say something's a lead and then an opportunity, and then it's adopting, it's renewing, expanding. In the new world, that's all so blurry together. The customer's thought process on renewing starts before they buy. It's this kind of continuous thing. And so I think it's harder because things are a lot blurrier in this SaaS world than they were in the old world. Obviously I think about customer success a lot, maybe a little too much, given what I do. And, I think there's just like a kind of a maturity curve for thinking about what customer success is. In the very tactical days when you're kind of reactive, customer success is literally customers not being mad at you, right? Like, it's like, I just don't want them to be mad. And then eventually you're like, I want them to be actually happy, not just not mad, right? That's a little bit better. And then, then SaaS companies started saying, well, I want them to actually use my products, novel idea. And but then what Manny said is true. Like, it's not just using our products, it's getting mature at the usage, it's seeing the value, it's getting sticky, it's adopting new use cases. And when you evolve as a company and a customer success team from the defensive, which is avoiding the problems, making sure they're not unhappy, avoiding churn, to the offense, which is I'm gonna make them more mature, I'm gonna make them more sticky, I'm gonna have them see value. That's when you go from customer success driving renewal to customer success accelerating expansion. That's how you have a high net retention rate.
I love that. I always think about how can I delight customers? One of the things that I think about most every day is like, how can we deliver more and more value to our customers so that our customers love every minute of getting to work with us, and we really, really delight them. And to me, that's the kind of deep customer relationships that you both described is what drives both strong relationships from a customer perspective and also a strong business and things like strong expansion and retention over time. So thank you both really very much. This was a terrific conversation. Lots of great ideas, great stories. Nick, Manny, hope you have a great day. Really great to hang out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Nick.
Hi, I'm Xander Lurie, the CEO at SurveyMonkey, based in San Mateo, California.
I'm Therese Tucker. I'm the CEO and founder of Blackline.
Hi, I'm Pierre Naudet, President and CEO of Encino in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Therese and Pierre, one question for you. En route to your IPO, what was the skill set you needed to build or refine on your journey?
Well, certainly I think one of the most important for me was learning the appropriate level of transparency. And you have to be very careful about forward-looking statements. My style would be to tell you everything that I think is going to happen in the next 10 years. Okay. Obviously, my CFO was not particularly happy with that approach. So we had to strike a balance in terms of what was appropriate to reveal, what level of detail, how much, in order to give our investors enough confidence in us to know what we were doing, but not so much that I was absolutely over-promising.
Yeah, I would say the discipline that we have to develop is that fine balance between celebration, transparency, and truly trust the people like we've done and how we built the company and the culture we've built versus what is material, non-public information, how do you treat information as confidential? Because realize we sell to banks and we deal with bank data every day. So we already have that discipline in place to understand where those lines are drawn. But when we went public, all of a sudden, people would say, well, can we celebrate a big deal? Can we celebrate, we signed a big logo in Europe, etc. And I think threading that needle is a challenge for all of us because you want your people to be unbridled and really celebrate with you. But then how much of that can you make public and what is actually then classified as material information?
The skill that I had to focus on developing on the run-up to the IPO was really about discipline. And I'm sure every CEO will tell you that she or he has a different skill they need to refine and a gap maybe in their skill set. For me, I kind of relished the opportunity to be extemporaneous and creative. But I think part of the job of the CEO, especially a public company CEO, is about communications to all of your stakeholders. I think starting with your employees and your customers most importantly, but your shareholder base and now increasingly the community and all the different partners in your ecosystem. And I think the consistent messaging, recognizing that people have a lot going on, they're often distracted when you're talking, And to get everybody really rowing in the same direction, you need to be vigilant in communicating your strategy, your mission, your priorities, what you count as success, your values. And that was something I really continue to try and develop as I grow as a leader. Therese, let me ask you, some of the best companies in the world have added the vast majority of their enterprise value since their IPO, whether it's Amazon or Google or Salesforce. BlackLine, I would put in that category as well. How would you characterize BlackLine being a stronger company as a public entity than you were as a private company?
Well, there's a lot of advantages to being public. Certainly liquidity for yourself and your investors is a big one, but it is also, frankly, a boon to your employees. And while, of course, you don't want people watching the stock price, the fact that they have an opportunity to share in the upside, they're putting away for houses and college funds and everything else, is just such a win and such a way to sort of spread the wealth. And when they really understand that the vast majority of your wealth is going to occur after the IPO, that gets people excited about the future. It helps with retention. It's just a win for everybody involved. And so I have loved seeing our employees come back and tell me that they've invested, that they've, bought things that were dreams to them because of what the stock has done. That's pretty exciting.
Xander, I was fortunate. I've been an officer of a public company before, but I do think what people underestimate is the value of the story and the disruption and the long-term future of your company versus the short-term results. If you take an example like Tesla, who had this vision for the longest time and today has a market cap much bigger than the big three automakers combined, okay? I think us as CEOs, you have to look at what is that long-term vision. Can you actually execute on that path? And yeah, there'll be bumps in the road, and be honest with your investors. Look, man, stuff is going to happen. I've got international operations. I've got local operations. I've got banks buying. There's economic cycles. But in the end, we're on that mission. We innovate at pace, and we'll get there.
I've owned a Tesla for years, but not the stock. Wish I could reverse that. Therese, let me ask you, you've been at this as a public company CEO for a while. What's the one learning you would share with aspiring public company CEOs about the balance you need to strike of hitting your short-term goals, but also being long-term focused in terms of what you're trying to build?
I'm very long-term focused at heart, Xander. And so I have found that the best way to handle that from a public market perspective is, one, your shareholder base. You need like-minded long-term holders. And you need to clearly communicate when you are balancing short-term against long-term. Sometimes long-term decisions have cost. And putting those out there and, being very, very clear on why you're making certain decisions for the long term, I find has been very well received.
That's great. Hey, Pierre, let me ask you, since it's so fresh, how did you and your team and your bankers think about the right pricing for your IPO and the pop? I don't remember what Encino, how it grew on the first day, but I remember it being pretty well received. So maybe share some of your thoughts about the IPO process.
I'll tell you with a big smile what happened. Okay, so you go through the notions, the pricing committee, and I've got a great VC, Inside Venture Partners, and we're debating what the price level should be. But you start debating 29, 31, etc. And if that thing runs to like what happened to us to 90, there's no ways for you to predict that, okay? There's a scarcity factor because we only sold something like 9 million shares. On top of that, you don't know the retail markets, and you try to get some long holders. In the beginning, you negotiate that and what it's willing to do. So obviously, there's a market factor that you and I cannot predict. To me today, I don't discuss stock prices because I'm not in control. I'm worried about my customers, my employees, and how we make the next quarter, how we beat the numbers and exceed expectations. That's what I'm concerned about. I can just tell you I'm very happy with what happened to us and the bankers. And in the end, you pitch for 5.5 days because I had a virtual roadshow. And you could either celebrate the fact that we moved the market cap from about 2 billion to 7 billion, or you can complain about maybe around 10 million left on the table on pricing. and I'll take that $5 billion move.
So I have found personally, not having been a public company CEO before, that by far the most important strategic position in the company was my CFO. Xander, you've been a CFO before. What qualities, Xander, would you look for in your own CFO, having done that job?
Yeah, I was a public company CFO for a short stint back in 2008, and then I was the interim CFO of SurveyMonkey before we hired our existing CFO, who's marvelous. Her name is Debbie Clifford. She came from Autodesk, and I really set out with some specific goals about the person I wanted to hire. We've been on a transformation to become an enterprise SaaS business from an end user subscription business. And so I really wanted somebody who had lived in that world and was steeped in sales finance and really understood LTVs and how you go about building that long-term model. And frankly, I wanted somebody who had an MBA in finance. You know, a lot of CFOs today tend to be more banker experienced or consultants. It's kind of the world I came from. So I wasn't the world's best accounting CFO, and I was really looking for somebody who could mentor our accounting organization, build a world-class FP&A organization. And you're right, the CFO is an incredibly strategic role. I always say to Debbie, you've got a key to everybody's office. We don't even have offices, but you don't need to announce yourself. Just walk in and you will get exactly what you need. So super important hire, and I think every CEO just needs to be specific about what she's looking for in terms of the skill set to build your company or to complement an area where that's not where you spend your time or you don't have that much interest.
It's a very interesting phenomenon if you build a company like this from scratch, that the fact that the CFO must be a team member, understand that we've got rules, but not be overbearing with rules and regulations and SOX compliance, etc., and actually allow the company to operate and function. And that cultural fit was very important to me, on top of the technical qualities, etc. But so I want to make sure we have a team member first that understands we all pull in the same direction, how we treat our people, how we speak to our people, etc. That is truly a strategic differentiator for us as a company. And then on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, we needed somebody who understands the street, who understands beat and raise, who can actually work with analysts to build the right models, etc. And I can tell you, we've just been extremely fortunate to find our CFO, David Rudo. He came here last October, and he's done a phenomenal job. And we'll tell him in the next few months exactly how well he's doing.
Do you think, each of you have gone a little bit of a different route there, do you think it's important to have a CFO who's been a public company CFO before?
In our case, it did not matter. I did not look for that. I felt we had the accounting people here. We understood what we were doing. We had auditors for a long time now, E&Y. So I felt we were well prepared. I wanted that investor relationship and street experience, but I do think every company is different.
I agree with Pierre here. I was really looking for somebody who brought a specific skill set to bear. The culture component to me was super important as well. Somebody who was enthusiastic and positive, would cross-check me against the wall when my ideas were wrong. And you know, the experience you build as a private company CFO or leader of FP&A can be just as valuable as a public company CFO. I know it looks good on the resume or when you announce it, but I wouldn't prioritize the medals around somebody's neck over the skills and experience they bring to bear.
See, I actually was so happy that my CFO had the skills and having done it before when I hadn't. So it was a great balance, you know, in terms of what I brought to the table. The other thing that I tend to just love about my CFO is that he's a very strategic thinker. He thinks 3 quarters ahead and where we might be and what he'll say and, you know, where we're going and how it might work out. And I love somebody that is just can handle a multi-pronged strategy, no matter, you know, pandemic hits or whatever, he's got it covered. And I so appreciate that in him. Pierre, you were the only one of the 3 of us to actually have to do a virtual roadshow. Tell us what the most memorable point in your roadshow was.
All of a sudden you realize you're not going to go to New York, you're not going to ring the bell, you're not going to travel across the country. It really is, it's a mind shift, okay? And we sat with the bankers and planned this thing out. I think if I look back, What the bankers thought is they could schedule me literally 10 meetings in a row per day, and we did it all in 4.5 days. That was memorable to me from the stamina it took and the enthusiasm and that drive to do it every day. But I will tell you, I would pace it better next time. But to me, it was extraordinary to tell the story over and over and over, and every time to see the reaction. And then it actually excites you because you realize you build a great company, the people around you are fantastic, and this may be just an awesome experience.
You know, Pierre, having done the actual roadshow, one of the things that sort of sticks in my memory is how close you get to your team. To the point where, you know, we would all climb into the third back seat of the Suburban and change out of our suits at the end of the day.
Well, look, I've been on the road all my life, and I will tell you that's the one thing I didn't miss is to fly across the country and get in cars and rushing through traffic to make meetings.
Yeah, I would echo some of the same sentiments from both of you. It was an incredible bonding experience with the team. It's just, you know, the 8 or 10 days in a row of just getting on and bringing that energy and trying to deliver your A game every day. That was a great bonding experience. I would always try and layer in new stories and feather in new customer stories and creative anecdotes just to keep my team like interested and engaged so I wasn't repeating myself 10 times a day for a couple of weeks. So we had a lot of fun memories, playlists that we listened to. It was obviously a huge culmination of a lot of people's hard work, so it was a lot of fun to be in Times Square at the NASDAQ and see everybody kind of reveling in the company's success. But you know, then you're back at it the next day, you're back to work and you're trying to build great products and help your customers and you got quarters to hit. So yeah, I think Pierre's way was a lot more efficient, but it was a memory that I'll never forget.
So Xander, if you think back of the transition from being private to public, what is your favorite memory of that whole experience?
I think it's been an evolving one. For me, it's really leaning into the value of being a public company. I think as CEOs, and you two are founders, so congrats to you. It's just we have this incredible position today where we have our voice, our employee base, our resources, our products. We have incredible opportunity to not only help our customers, help our shareholders win, but also deliver some change in the world. I think being a public company has afforded us opportunities to speak up and do some things that a private company we just didn't have access to.
I would like to ask you, Therese, then, if you look at this, how do you think it's affected the culture of your company, being public with all the rules, regulations, etc. So far?
Frankly, I think we've done a really good job of keeping the culture of our company, despite being public. Because we have always encouraged and have been able to retain a take care of your customers and take care of each other. Serve your customers, serve each other. If you don't like the word service, you're in the wrong company. And so we have kept that focus in every hire, in every communication, and it's been surprisingly resilient because there is a pressure to make short-term decisions. There is a pressure to, run for that next quarter number. But I have to say the people that we've hired have done just a fabulous job of making sure that those values permeate the entire culture.
That is pretty special. How do you coach them not to watch the stock price every day?
I don't know that you're ever going to ask people to not watch the stock price. I think the best thing to do is set the example. Don't watch it yourself. I will oftentimes have people say, "Oh, have you seen?" And I'll say, "No, I haven't looked at it yet today."
Xander, all of us deal with challenges of hiring and right people, etc. How did you keep your company culture, maintain the employees, prevent the high turnover after the IPO? What is your collective experience around all of that through the IPO process and subsequently?
I think we've learned a lot, Pierre, especially in Silicon Valley and technology. We have, there are a lot of challenges in our industry, and I think it's been highlighted, frankly, since the George Floyd killing and Black Lives Matter, racial justice issues that we're all dealing with. Our diversity numbers are not where we need to be in the industry, and I think it's pushing all of CEOs to really make HR a fundamental part of your job. Who you employ, how you pay, who you promote, and what kind of culture and values you espouse at your company. So I think we all are living in a world now where our jobs and our practices are being scrutinized much more closely. And if you don't steer into it, if you don't love investing in your culture, this is not a great job to have.
Totally agreed.
You know, there's not a lot of tech companies out there that have women CEOs right now, and especially women with pink hair. So it's kind of cool to get to be a role model for high school girls, for young women who are actually wondering if tech is a career that's available to them. And so some of the speaking engagements that I get to do, some of the mentoring that I get to do is really kind of a beautiful thing, because you just see so much potential in these young women, and they're so hopeful that they can go out and conquer the world. And being a positive influence on them is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, congrats to Therese, one of the few women CEOs in tech. And, you know, you got to give somebody like Benioff credit. Like, he has long been an advocate for, you can just do a lot more as a public company CEO of a company with scale and growth and profitability. You don't need to be confined to just hitting your EPS targets. You actually can speak out and take action on a whole broad range of issues that are important to your customers and your employees. And I think we all take that advice, and we can do more with it. It's been a lot of fun to see our company activate here.
And I think overall, what a great conversation today, to really hear from other public company CEOs that this is a priority, that overall the IPO, the public company experience has been very positive. I would echo that as well. It's always fun to see people moving in the right direction.
Awesome. Nice to see you, Therese.
Thank
Pierre.
you. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you all.
Bye now.
Hi, I'm Dave McJanet, CEO of HashiCorp.
I'm Edith Herba, LaunchDarkly CEO and co-founder.
My name is Yancey Spruill, and I'm the CEO of DigitalOcean.
Thanks for joining us at Cloud 100. Today we're going to talk about developer platforms. Just even the word developer platforms is something new. You know, 10 to 20 years ago, developers really didn't have much budget and weren't really purchasing software like they are now. So my question for both of you is, why do you think that's changed? Why do developers suddenly have budget and the ability to purchase developer platforms?
Edith, I'll start with that. I think the impact of developers has been growing for the last 15, 20 years. And I think the difference in our view is that historically people didn't spend a lot of money on developer tooling. So developers were not an audience that people really paid that much attention to commercially. But I think what's happened is commercially, developers have much more influence now in sort of bigger decisions that are being made around software purchases. I think it's actually the impact of both. It's sort of the developer tooling market is a relatively small commercial market, but it's that they have an outsized influence in the decision-making process. And I actually think I credit Microsoft for it, honestly. I think Microsoft mastered this with their developer and platform evangelism function years ago and invested in that. And I think it's borne fruit.
Yeah, I would say that the cloud has really enabled democratization of software across the enterprise. And so where historically you'd have centralized IT departments that controlled new applications being brought onto the on-premise infrastructure, and they had to manage security, they had all the program management, procurement rules, and all the rest of it. I think, as the software tools that people could use have become easier to manage and not be decoupled from these big software platforms, enterprise platforms, I just think it's made it easier. And I think, organizations got over the hump probably 8-9 years ago in allowing people who are closer to the applications to actually make the decisions. And that there's nothing more powerful than with software developers in the organization, where they could choose the tools, and then the organization still figure out all the other security and other things. But even that becomes less and less of an issue as the whole platform becomes cloud. And I think that's really the power of what we all are enabling, in the economy.
Yeah, Edith, maybe I'll make another angle on the question is that it's that developers are the ones that spend their time working in software, and as the internet more broadly emerged, those people started to discover software, and I think that's the difference. No longer were they burdened by the legacy salesperson from Oracle to come and tell them about some new technology product. They could discover it for themselves, and by virtue of us all connecting on a common network, all the information is now accessible. So it shouldn't be surprising that the people driving the adoption of new software are those people that live and breathe and work in software every day. And whether that software is going to be deployed on-prem or on cloud is sort of a secondary concern. It's more that the decisions around which software is going to get used are now being driven by people that live in the world of software. I think that's very different than maybe a decade ago.
I know what we've seen in our own customers is that developer happiness is an important metric. That if people are using it every day and happy with it, they're going to be happy at your company as opposed to just taking whatever is given to them and maybe not being happy and then going to another company.
Yeah, I think the cool part about that is that it sort of removed this barrier of the hegemony of a few software vendors in the world controlling what we all use, because now the sort of this common network connectivity tends to favor the best technology that people like to use. So it's you're now catering to the user need as opposed to the organizational need as the primary. And I think that's a huge inflection point, and it's a very different way of building a business, candidly, because now we all understand the need to appeal to the user, and when those users move to the next company, they bring that tech with them, whether there's a PO in place or not, and I think that's very, very different.
And I think the rise of open source and myriad of software tools that are innovated outside of those narrow platforms that Dave referenced has also created this whole ecosystem and knowledge base around software tools that could be customized or more relevant for particular use cases, and depending upon the developer style, programming style, desires of the organization, they have way more flexibility. Trying to restrict that versus unleash it in the creativity that it enables. And I think that developer happiness scale or index is a good proxy for the people who are fueling growth, not just in tech companies, but most companies now need software, as a key competency, to enable innovation and productivity in their business.
A trend I've seen myself is that just a willingness to pay for tools for developer productivity. When I started in software, our QA manager actually built our issue tracking system in Lotus Notes. And now anybody who's working in software is like, well, why didn't you just buy Atlassian and Jira and be done with it? It's like, well, Jira didn't exist back then. So I think there's a whole wave of it's okay to have the budget, and let's have our developers focus on higher level activities than building an issue tracking system or DigitalOcean or HashiCorp. Are you seeing the same thing in your own customers, or is there still resistance to build versus buy?
Yeah, I think this comes to the nuances of business models a little bit too. That I think we've learned to make our products freely available to everybody, so that they aren't faced with that decision so early. And so I think as companies mature, we're building products that appeal to the developers, and then the question always becomes, okay, at what point does that transition to being more of a commercial partnership, so that they sort of make the build versus buy a leap? We see, our view is a little bit purist, candidly. Our true north is the user, and we just trust that if we add value to that user over time, we can build a commercial partnership with them. And so I think it's that true north is always the user. So absolutely, we come up against people in the build category all the time, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, and I would say our whole mission is that we create a platform for people to build on, and our customers are testing code, they're building a business, scaling a business on our platform. So they're fundamentally builders, entrepreneurs, developers. And we feed into that. And I think, tools like ours, to Ida's point, people don't have to manage their own IT. Nobody thought that 10 or even 20 years ago for sure. And now no one thinks the difference of I'm going to outsource my infrastructure and then focus the efforts of my talent, the capital I've raised, et cetera, on productizing and my relationship with the customer. And we're facilitating our builders' productivity through the platform and the tools that we build.
I briefly want to touch on that developers are also much more prevalent than I think than they were 10 or 20 years ago. Cloud used to just be constrained to high tech, and now it's also in automotive, financial, media, everywhere. It's no longer something that's on the side or on the end. It is actually your same business. Do you think that's leading to the power of developers?
Obviously, almost every business has a relationship through the web, and having the tools and the powering behind that from a productization perspective, distribution, branding, etc. It's all tied to software. Whereas when I started my career, very little of it was software. It was emerging as hardware, but it was all sort of physical. And the increase in softwareization of the economy is just making all businesses, software companies, they have to have a competency in software.
A developer can build something which massively increases the productivity of their entire company. They can build something that allows them to enter into a new market and just leapfrog others. And I think that is what we're in the midst of, is sort of this industrial revolution driven by digital, whereas the previous industrial revolution is about manufacturing. In a world where there really is no raw material other than an idea and some text typed into an editor, your only constraint really is your imagination in terms of businesses you can build. And I think developers are the ones with that superpower.
We're seeing that with our own customers, like BMW, where it went from you shipped a car and then it just sat in your driveway and never changed. With software, they can continually update the car and give it more capabilities. So even stuff that we think of as static is now a lot more dynamic.
The commercial differentiator is no longer my ability to build the most sophisticated vehicle. I've actually provided a software delivery platform that allows me to leapfrog every month what other people are bringing to market. I think that's how these markets are being won by our users and your users, is by expressing that superpower that they have. So they may not control the budget per se, but they're certainly in the bullseye of what their companies are trying to do.
And the world has really evolved as well to the notion of software is not a product. Customer experience has been conditioned across the planet to expect change in updates in the product, not on an annual or multi-annual cycle like it used to be. And so it just has raised the prominence and expectation of all of us as customers or users of some product or service that the software aspect of it is going to continually make the experience better. I believe we all do things differently in that regard. I think it'd be good to talk about how we approach selling to, engaging, communicating with developers. And then the other is related is this whole area of developer evangelism. And how do each of us in our businesses sort of approach that angle to conditioning and building brand and capability and reputation across the developer community?
I think that the key to success with developers is really recognizing that you have to make them happy and make them productive, and then also make a product that the organization which they work for feels comfortable purchasing. And I think the key is to have them both. What we've seen over and over at LaunchDarkly, and we serve 6 billion flags now, feature flags worldwide, is that we'll have a developer that loves us, is very successful at a job, and then they go to a new company and they want to take us with them. And there's no better feeling than getting that call at the second, third job where they say, hey, you helped me so much at my old job and I want to buy again. That you're seen as a trusted advisor where you're helping them do their job better. So that's a lot of our go-to-market activities right there, is just making sure that we have these built-in evangelists, monitoring our net promoter score. The second motion then is being able to have a product that people can purchase for their company. If you're a huge enterprise, there's some table stakes in terms of GDPR compliance, where it has to be basically enterprise ready. And I think for a long time in the developer landscape, it was seen as like an either or, that you were friendly developers and therefore not enterprise grade, or you're enterprise grade and therefore developers hated you. I think a really successful platform has both. Something developers love to use, and that any company can purchase.
We think about it in a similar way, which is we try to step all the way back and go, we actually don't just serve developers. Developers is just one of the audiences we serve. We actually have ops people, security people, networking people, and developers. So step number one is delineating your audience and saying, I want to authentically commit to making that person successful, whether they turn into a customer or not, because enterprise software at a certain degree is about trust. It's about trust for the tech decision maker, but it's also about trust with the practitioner that uses the tech. So we delineate the audiences, we identify the journeys that they're going to go on, and then we cater to them authentically. So the practitioner has a journey. The tech decision maker has a similar journey that says, all right, I get that people inside my company like this tech, but I have a sort of different set of requirements. I need to be able to, understand the why, try, buy kind of journey that they go through. And I think it's the delineation of those two journeys out of the gate that's really, really critical. And number two, it's being deeply committed to the authentic, successful completion for both those participants is how this is done at scale. As an example, we just give a sense, we probably have about 25 people purely in our developer evangelism organization. That's all they do. We ring fence that investment as a separate thing, and their measurement is explicit. Is the developer, is the ops security networking person getting what they need from us, whether we have them as a customer or not? So I think it's the decoupling of those personas, which is so key, because I think you're right. Developers don't necessarily have a budget to spend, but they're enormously impactful.
Yeah, I think our approach is similar on the evangelist side. We put a lot of effort, we call it community, and we treat the global sort of entrepreneur developer community, similarly in that we invest in them. We produce a lot of free content, we hold events, we invest in their learning development, with the notion that, we're not trying to monetize every instance of their engaging with our content. We're really trying to help them get liftoff on the next idea. Because I think what Edith said is absolutely true. If you win the hearts and minds by helping people make a breakthrough in opportunity one or opportunity X as they go throughout their career, they're going to come back because they're going to remember that we invested, we partnered with them. Frankly, we're part of that ecosystem. And I think that is a key aspect, that's very different than the traditional model around selling software, where it was very transactional, very terms and conditions, very much sales cycle. This is much more about a long-term, we view it as a long-term commitment as a part of this broader community that we invest in. And it's really core to our essence, and I think it's why we've been successful and have over 500,000 customers today, but many, many millions, maybe an order of magnitude more than that, of people who touch DO in one way or another, whether it's reading tutorials, going to an event and learning about technical issues that matter to them.
For Launch Darkly, we were really starting a new category of feature flagging and feature management. So a lot of our early evangelism was just that, hey, there's a better way to build software. Like we did not invent the technique of feature flagging, but I and my co-founder really thought that this was just something that everybody should be using and that there should be a product out there that made it easier. So we've always had kind of a dual path of just feature flagging is a better way to build software. And even if you don't use Launch Darkly, though I sincerely hope you do, and thank you, Dave and HashiCorp, for being our customers, even if you're not using us, this is a great way to build software. And once you're happy with feature flagging, you should consider us. But it's a very genuine effort from us to just build better software.
You guys are a great example of how big these markets are. Think about the software development lifecycle. Feature flagging is something all of us were doing for many years, but we're all doing it ourselves. And as this community's gotten bigger and bigger, what's popped is actually everybody's trying to struggle with the same stuff, and entirely new software categories are getting created within the developer ecosystem. As people are realizing, wait a second, everybody's trying to provision infrastructure on multiple places. Like, why am we all reinventing this? Everybody's trying to do feature flagging. And I think you're seeing some really large companies getting built on the back of what is really a TAM expansion. That none of us appreciated how big these TAMs were. And you shared the number as at 5 billion feature flags a month, or some enormous number that none of us could ever have imagined that would be the scale.
Yeah, Dave, just to clarify, this might surprise you, but it's actually 6 trillion with a T features every day. It's just
there you go, 6 trillion features a day. It's an amazing number. So we've been talking a bit about the go-to-market models around developers and sort of the notion of developers. But I don't think we talk enough about the impact of the developer platforms that we're all building. So maybe answer, what's unique about your developer community that jumps out at you?
Well, I think what I'm struck by, every customer that I speak to, they're all over the place, 100+ countries. And what we enable is, that the fact that, 10, 20 years ago, for someone to chase an idea, to stand up their own IT and to buy the hardware, the software, the cooling and the data center, the network connectivity, et cetera, it's just the barriers to entry for any single idea were just too large, measured in tens of thousands, in some cases maybe hundreds of thousands, just for the core IT. To me, that's the power of what we can enable, is that, the old models of really expensive, complex software riding on complexity, just didn't enable people to be themselves and chase dreams. And that's the common idea, is that we are unleashing human potential at virtually no cost. And you're seeing why that's creating much larger TAMs, as Dave referenced earlier, and huge platforms are evolving out of it.
Ultimately, this is about people building net new things. Like that's what's happening in the world. People are building net new digital applications, and they're building them on a different platform than they used to. And I think they used to build. If I had to build a new, mask extension application, I would have built it on-prem in a very traditional way, and your developers would be doing, things they've been doing for 20 years. And I think what's happening now is actually the new platform are places like DigitalOcean, they're cloud platforms where those applications are getting deployed. And that's exposing how completely horizontal these software markets are for all of us. It's, wait a second, it's not just the high-tech companies that are building new applications on cloud. They figured out the blueprint for how to do it, but actually it's the global 5,000 that's now doing it. And so the platforms that we have built initially to meet the needs of a very specific set of users who are our peers here in Silicon Valley, or wherever it might be, because we were the ones building net new applications on cloud. Those have become very horizontal platforms that actually, in a sense, surprised us at how big the TAMs are. We can't talk about what we're doing without just maybe referencing a little bit of what's going on in the macro. Maybe Edith, just any comments on the impact of sort of the macro COVID piece, the shift to work from home, and maybe how that's impacting your company in ways that you may or may not have expected?
COVID has definitely increased the trend we were already seeing towards digital transformation. It has accelerated many projects of, a bank saying, how do we get people to check their balance online, to, okay, everybody needs to check their balance online because we don't want them to come to the branch right now. So a lot of projects are getting just accelerated greatly because of need.
Obviously, everyone's disrupted. The thing about this is every single human being knows about it. It's been impacted by it. Economic crises, there's lots of data historically that says that's a catalyst for a lot of entrepreneurialism. In fact, a lot of cloud giants today were formed in that 07, 08 timeframe, the last crisis that we had. So we're definitely seeing that. And so that's that's good. That's accelerating and allowing our customers to thrive during this period and serve bigger market opportunities as the world changes.
It's curious. People keep talking about how this macro shock is accelerating trends. I mean, my parents now know how to use Zoom, and they probably wouldn't have happened for another few years previously. Just as an example, and digital transformation is one of the huge things that is getting accelerated because people are saying, if I don't have a digital relationship with my customers, I'm gonna have a major issue. And paradoxically, our companies are actually, all of us are actually all built on the back of digital engagement with our customers, because that's just how you engage developers, right? I can't go to 1,000 meetups and meet people. So our businesses are fundamentally using a digital distribution channel, which is a digital relationship with our customers to engage them. You couple that with the fact that it's accelerating the shift to cloud as the new place for building applications, and I think the market shift is despite all the macro headwinds, there's some positivity embedded when you look at the math. Obviously, I think all of us are hugely convicted of the power of the developer, the importance of the developer, whether they are making the purchase decision or whether they are influencing it as it relates to building businesses. So Thanks, Edith and Yancy, for spending the time with me and talking through this. We're certainly all very pleased to be recognized on the Cloud 100 and excited to be back here next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation. And congratulations to you both for also being in Cloud 100.
I'm Alex Conrad, a senior editor at Forbes.
Hi, I'm Jonas Beschouwerd, founder and CEO at StackShare.
Hi, I'm Liz Zalman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Strong DM.
Hi, I'm Baron Davis, founder of Baron Davis Enterprise.
So, Baron, Liz, Jonas, thank you so much for joining this conversation. It's exciting to be with three up-and-coming, entrepreneurs from different backgrounds and very different endeavors. I'd love if we could just hear a little bit about what you're working on in terms of mission and what your company is doing. Why don't we start with Baron? If you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing since being an all-star in the NBA and kind of well-known, I'd say, to a lot of folks for your athletic career.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's been fun. Life after basketball, I say I used the NBA to get my MBA. And so I founded and created a company, a management factory called Business Inside the Game. And the goal is to create, media events to curate athletes, investors, and C-suites and bring about the right cohesive network, very similar to a management factory or a management accelerator.
That's awesome. Liz, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about Strong DM and what your goal is there.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. Strong DM manages and audits access to infrastructure, servers, databases, firewalled web apps, Kubernetes clusters. Strong provides a way for you to connect remote employees to infrastructure, no matter where it is, and then audit what they're doing once they're in those systems.
Awesome. And Jonas, tell us a little bit about StackShare, hopefully.
Sure. So we're building the world's first technology decision collaboration platform for software developers. And so today, over 500,000 software developers use StackShare to make technology decisions. We show you what the big companies are actually using and help you decide what you should use. So for example, you can actually see what Forbes is using to power Forbes.com because the VP of engineering at Forbes actually shared the technology profile. We help you make better decisions by showing you what other people are using. And then we actually help you get a handle on what's happening internally.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully the Forbes tech stack measures up to our peers. To get into the fun stuff, all three of you are doing something pretty different, but what would you say is driving you to have been, gone down the entrepreneurial path in the first place?
I guess I'll go first. I would say, I saw a huge void in the market and as far as NBA players, and I realized that there are so many more athletes that, are successful and have been successful life after basketball. And so at that point, just kind of set out to figure out, where there are holes between the NBA, the players, influencers, their managers, and really trying to kind of bridge gaps and fill those holes with solutions.
So Liz and Jonas, I know your companies are probably a little less NBA focused, but was there similarly a gap that was inspiring you, or what was driving each of you to kind of do your own thing?
Oh, I don't know, Alex. We actually have one of the major sports leagues as a customer, although it is not the NBA.
Well, we got to get the NBA.
No, Baron, they should be. I got to tell you, man, I can't even imagine when you're playing, you secretly tweak your ankle in practice and you don't want somebody knowing about it, and that exam goes into a player database, and you want to know who has access to it and what they're doing with it when they get it. No, but Alex, to answer your question, I started my first company because I thought I could do better. I was working for a company that did display advertising on the web, and mobile was just starting. HTML5 had just become a thing, and I said, well, why can't we do that on smartphones? And so I started a company, raised money, and sold it. And then the company that acquired my company was in big data. They were processing hundreds of millions of MAC addresses a day, right, which is essentially personally identifiable information. And they had a data breach. And so StrongDM, which actually started to sit there and think from the ground up, what could we actually do to protect ourselves. Ourselves could be employees, ourselves could be companies, ourselves could be player data, in a way that sort of moves us forward as technology is progressing.
And Jonas, what about StackShare? What's driving you?
My parents were born and raised in Ethiopia, and so they immigrated maybe 40 years ago. My dad is an entrepreneur, started a bunch of different businesses, and so kind of had that in me. And my first job out of college was actually in management consulting and IT strategy. And so I saw how these big Fortune 500 companies were making technology decisions using Gartner PDF reports, right? And I hated it. I got into startups. I came out here to the Bay Area, started working for an early stage startup that had just gone through Y Combinator. They were based in Mountain View. And I saw how the founders would email other founders in their batch and say, hey, we have free credits with this cloud service and that cloud service, which one should we use? And they did this over email. So I thought, this is pretty messy, there should be a solution for this. And I also wanted to get a handle on all the different cloud technologies and developer tools out there. So for me, it's always been just like being passionate about the problem space and then wanting to finally solve this problem.
So all three of you saw a problem or saw the need for something that wasn't existing and thought, okay, I can be the one to build that. And so I'm curious if you guys started with the idea and then committed to being the entrepreneur, or if you were already kind of sure that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and then the idea presented itself. Jonas, I see you nodding, so you wanna start maybe?
Sure, yeah. I think I definitely decided that I wanted to start a company. And I had no idea what that was going to be or when that was going to be. So that was the beginning of it. But then the problem presented itself and I just fell in love with the entire space. And so that's what I always say is like you fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So you can pivot on how you solve it. But if you stick with the problem itself, then you'll never get tired of it, right? You'll keep thinking of new things. So that's how it happened for me.
Look, I care deeply about the fact that you've got legacy companies that are now moving into the cloud and you've got multiple data centers you have to manage access to and a fractured workforce and sort of you need to rethink the security paradigm from the ground up, certainly. And I care deeply about protecting Barron's data from bad people or good people, right? Sometimes people just have accidents when they're at work. I love my product. I almost don't care what it's going to take in order to get it to where it needs to be, provided that my employees love coming to work and we're honoring the principles that we start with and we get the result we need. So I'm fond of saying, I don't care how we sell the product. If my sales team said to me, Liz, you could stand in the middle of Times Square and wave a flag, and if you wave that flag for 24 hours a day, everybody in the world's gonna buy your product, I would wave that flag until I fell over with exhaustion. So I think it's a combination. I agree with Jonas. I think you just know that you wanna start a company. You know that it's what you wanna do deep in your heart, and you get excited about the fact that you have no idea what the day is gonna bring, right? No matter how well planned your day is, when you get up in the morning, you have no idea how it's gonna end. And that's what I love most about my job.
Yeah, I would agree with both. I would say, I knew I was a serial entrepreneur because of my ADD from basketball. So when I left and became my own agent, I really had to manage myself, right? So I had to get the marketing deals, build a foundation, set up my basketball AAU, and so that just led me to learn a bunch of stuff, but already be in the entrepreneurial spirit. And so for me, it was, build this management company to manage myself, and then, build a sports platform where we can allow athletes to have data transparency, but also to own the content that they have and own the content that they would generate.
How does that ownership affect all three of you in terms of your motivation? Like is it when it's your baby or when it's your company, does that just give you an extra gear to kick into that you can kind of just keep on going and kind of stay motivated? Because I'm sure the grind is considerable.
Alex, somebody said to me, my CTO said to me a year and a half ago, there was a horrible moment, and he said to me, Liz, you have peaks and you have valleys, and there is no rule in life that says that every peak or every valley must be followed by a peak. You can have 17 valleys in a row. And it's sort of like dating. like you think about going out on dates. Sorry, I'm going to give it personal for a second, right? And you date and you date and you date and you date and you have no idea when it's going to hit. It could take 100 years for it to hit. And then you go on that first day and you're like, damn, I like that person. Like, wow. And so you have to have faith in that process. And I think certainly being a founder means that it's not about what you make. It's not about your equity on the cap table. Like, you are literally putting your life in dollar for dollar next to your employees. And the only thing you care about is actualizing that and making it come to be. I don't know if anybody else has a dating story like that, but that's my experience.
I was gonna say I agree. My my founder dating, finding the right people. I'm terrible at hiring. So I'm dating and dating and dating and dating and dating. And so it's like, okay, I figured it out. I might as well be independent and let someone else come in and do the dating process. So I totally agree. I totally agree with that metaphor.
I think, when it is your baby, you do tend to put a little more into it. But it also, there's the other side of it where a lot of the decisions and a lot of the things that happen are ultimately on you. So you do feel that responsibility for your employees, for your investors, for everyone that's looking up to you and like following your story. At the same time, that sort of like holds you up because you know that it's not just about you doing your job. There's like all these dependencies, right? All these people that are depending on you. And so it kind of gives you that extra energy as well, right? To keep going, even when you don't want to, because it's not about you anymore.
No, I totally agree. I would say for, our platform, Slick, Sports, Lifestyle, and Culture, we started in the content business and it was like, well, all the money's gone. All right, where are we going next? We'll go into the publishing business. Oh, all the money is gone. And you learn to listen, right? And you learn to be able to be nimble and to pivot. I say set your vision super duper high because you can always reinvent yourself to get there. And when you get there, it's a great opportunity to reinvent yourself again, right? And so it's like continuing that motivation, continue to listen, right? But don't be afraid to get knocked down, right? We've had 2 years of losing streaks and now all of a sudden we're like on the up and up, right? And so it's really just when you're losing, understand why you are losing, right? And how close you were to winning, you know what I mean?
So in today's world with so much going on, what is it like for you to be entrepreneurs and people, with responsibility in a very difficult year, but also a year with a lot of introspection and a lot of important, discussions happening?
I think the year, Alex, it's a great question. The year has been, I think, it's been fascinating personally and professionally. So professionally, business is up. This business was designed for COVID. We do remote access to infrastructure. And so as a leader, the way that I think about it is that the team comes from diverse backgrounds, diverse skin colors, different religions, very different politics, different genders across the whole range of the gender spectrum now. And at the end of the day, what we want to honor is that work has to be a safe space. And so work is whatever the employee needs it to be in that moment. That's how I think about honoring 2020 as a leader.
I would say for us, 2020 has definitely been challenging. I think for me as a leader, listening to the people you work with, right? Treating them as human beings, right? Having business conversations, but set aside Zoom time to have open conversations. And so we've been seeing great success in our business because a lot of corporate companies, Fortune 100 to startup companies have been raising their hands and saying, how can we be more responsible, right? How can we, support, Black and brown and women and LGBTQ? How can we be a part of, a better ecosystem? Because when you start looking at our country, you start looking at America, it's a melting pot, right? And for so long we've been segregated, right? So long we've been, kind of in our own silos as people until, the recent pandemic, right? Which forced us all to go inside and do some reflection. And then, with the George Floyd and, everything else that's been happening since, everyone has not only done self-reflection, but it's been a time of motivation where people want to rally, right? People are raising their hands, they want to do right. Entrepreneurs are stepping forth and saying, you know what, I was timid about going out and raising money, we need help, right? And so to be in a position where I would say we are the middle manager, right? And we're the bridge, it's been a great position, but a lot of responsibility. And I think for that, it's important to just make sure we all know that even though we're behind these Zooms, we can laugh, we can joke, right? And there's still a human side to, the work that we're gonna put forth.
Yeah, I guess I'll just start on the business side. When COVID-19 hit, for us, fortunately, we were already used to having some of our team members remote. So we were using Zoom, Slack, Google Docs, all of that. And for our actual business, it actually ended up being pretty positive because everyone is now distributed and has a greater need for collaboration, and particularly engineering teams, right? So the fact that we brought this product to market, that sort of, maps out your tech stack internally and helps your developers talk about these decisions that are being made, just that ended up being really good timing for us. And so it was funny, actually, at the time when, I think this was March or April, if you had Googled Zoom versus Google Meet, you'd see StackShare as, the top result. So we saw the business, go up and to the right, and then it felt like there was a second pandemic that hit with, with George Floyd being murdered and Breonna Taylor. And so it really felt like this second wave, particularly, for myself, as a Black founder, I definitely felt it with my peers, with family, with friends. And so I think that what it made me realize was that everyone is going through something, right? And business is one aspect of it, but there's also, like Baron's saying, there's the human aspect of it where you have to give people time to actually deal with what's going on in not only the world, but their own lives, And so it kind of just caused some reflection, right? And us saying hey, it's okay to step back for a little bit. And even I told my team, was hey, I need some time to process all this, and I wanted to do some things to help. So I think we all realize that it's okay to do that.
How have you handled pressure, right? Being a Black founder in this social justice position, also being a female founder, right? In a time where, females are fighting for, their rights and their power. Talk about the pressure, from peers and family to be that leader, and, especially with the companies that you guys are building.
Baron, you're right. It is being a female in hardcore security and infrastructure. It's a tremendous responsibility. I hear it sometimes in interviews with other women, and I'm always struck when I hear it because I don't expect it because I don't see myself that way. I'm a human. I can tell you the way that I've been managing it is I started seeing a therapist because I need somebody to talk to about the pressures. Yeah, Jonas, what you said about I need time as a leader to step back and reflect on what's happening, I think that's it. The only way to process is by being open and honest and talking about the struggles that you are having as a human, as a member of the human race, as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because I think there is a lot of pressure, but at the same time, because of everything that's happening now, I feel like there's just a lot of support for, particularly for Black founders, right? Now, I think there's a lot of folks that want to help. There's a lot of new initiatives. And the way that I've always looked at it is that, yeah, there's pressure on me, but also at the same time, I've always felt like whatever stage I get to, I'm not going to be successful in my own view unless I'm bringing other people with me, right? Other Black founders. And so for me, that's been kind of the driving force, is helping other Black founders get to the same stage or get past me, has always been the goal. Is to me, it wouldn't be a win, right? If StackShare gets to where it wants to go and IPOs and then that's it, it's going to take another 100 years for us to really see Black founders flourish. So I just try to make sure that I do what I can to help other Black entrepreneurs. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Baron, right? Where through all of your endeavors, you've probably done countless things for other Black entrepreneurs, and I think that's part of what helps relieve some of that pressure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Along those lines, guys, I know we're almost out of time, but I think it's really interesting. For a while, it was sort of like the cult of the startup founder was you kind of, took no prisoners, you were a college dropout, you were out to just like conquer the world, and it was kind of very combative, very aggressive. I don't know if it's current events or it's just people being more intentional, but it feels like the current wave of rising entrepreneurs are a bit different, that maybe they're more collaborative. Is that something that resonates with any or all of you, or kind of what would be your thoughts on kind of that current vibe among your peers?
I would say now more than ever, I would say my generation or our generation, we're looking to support, right? We're looking at a movement. We're thinking differently about government. We're thinking differently about institutions, right? We're thinking differently about media, right? And security and things like that. I would say the generation or a couple generations before that were like renegades and bullish and just like, disruptive. I think our disruption comes with a feeling of responsibility, right? So how can you disrupt the current system, right? And then build a better ecosystem to where you're actually giving to the world. And so the collaboration amongst, peers and, even for us in the case of like raising money and partnering, it's been an incredible opportunity for us and something that, I feel good about, and I think that it will continue to be embedded in the DNA of these entrepreneurs.
The founders that are coming up now, especially the younger ones, are much more collaborative and much more willing to support each other and open. We're just not gonna make it if everyone's gonna be out for themselves, and there's so much opportunity out there that it's like, why not support each other, right?
I do think that there are things that are cutthroat and will remain cutthroat. So if I'm going out for a fundraise at the same time as my two competitors, my God, it's going to be a fight to the end. But certainly I think there's such a collaboration without shame, without ego, without pride, and it is beautiful to see how the collective sort of helps us all uplift in whatever way we need in that moment. That is unique, and that didn't exist 7 years ago when I was at my last company, for sure.
Well, it's really cool to see this group of rising star entrepreneurs, obviously the ones on our list, but also countless others pulling together and coming up with cool ideas, and I think kind of tackling markets where I think, as you said, Liz, like, y'all are still very competitive, you're still type A people, but maybe just a little more mindful about how to like build a sustainable business, and I think that's really exciting to see. So, from Forbes' position and for I think all of us with Cloud 100, it's really great to see how you all are building your businesses and how you think about entrepreneurship right now, a very important time. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you again for joining Salesforce Ventures, Bessemer Venture Partners and Forbes for this year's Cloud 100. We're so thrilled you were able to join us virtually to celebrate the best of the best in cloud and hear from these amazing leaders. Increasingly, successful companies are recognizing that giving back and integrating strong values into their business practices is not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do, especially when it comes to attracting and retaining top talent and even partners, customers, and investors. There has never been a more important time for businesses to leverage their own time, product, profit, equity, and their voice to be a force for good. We've been amazed to see so many Cloud 100 honorees step up to support their communities in this immense time of need. From helping nonprofits, schools, and health providers effectively deliver services remotely by leveraging free technology to investing time, resources to address issues around PPE, public health awareness, food security, and small business viability. The impact has been remarkable.
That's why Bessemer Venture Partners and Salesforce Ventures are strong supporters of the Pledge 1% movement. Pledge 1% is a global movement to inspire, educate, and empower companies like yours and leaders like you to be a force for good.
Each year at the Cloud 100, we award the Pledge 1% Impact Award to a company that demonstrates an authentic, outstanding commitment to social impact. I'm honored to name this year's recipient Canva.
Hey everyone, we're really excited to announce this year's winner for the 1% Pledge Impact Award. The 1% Pledge is an incredible program that we're really proud to be a part of. It encourages companies to give back and helps to build a culture of corporate philanthropy. It's up to all of us to help build the world that we want to be a part of. The 1% Pledge is very aligned with our two-step plan at Canva. 1, to build one of the world's most valuable companies, and 2, to do the most good that we can do. We still have an incredibly long way to go on step 1. We are less than 1% of the way there, but hopefully we are headed in the right direction. And I guess in this day and age, companies have a much greater responsibility than the old mantra, to do no evil. We have an incredible opportunity and in fact an incredible responsibility to create a world that's better for everyone who lives here. I would love to see every business, every VC, every journalist, in fact every single person to step up and to take heed of their power to help make this world better for everyone who lives here. It's easy to think that it's someone else's responsibility, but it's not. It's absolutely all of ours.
The Canva team and their amazing CEO, Melanie Perkins, have consistently shown their dedication to giving back. Being a force for good has been one of Canva's core values since day one. The Canva Foundation's goal is to solve global challenges in the most impactful way possible by giving youth in poverty access to the skills needed to succeed in the digital economy and empowering nonprofits to achieve their goals and increase their impact through design.
Along with donating their product to over 60,000 nonprofit organizations, Canva has also completed their 1% equity pledge and set aside a portion of their company's equity for social impact so they can continue to do amazing work through the Canva Foundation as they grow.
Today, we want to encourage all founders and CEOs out there to join with us, the members of the Pledge 1% movement, and specifically to set aside a portion of your company's equity. This is something that you can control today that will enable you to have the resources to tackle issues that we will face in our future.
In fact, many of today's most successful companies and Cloud 100 graduates like Canva, DocuSign, PagerDuty, Pluralsight, SendGrid, Slack, and Twilio have pledged equity. In the last 4 years alone, Cloud 100 companies have set aside equity for social impact and ignited over $500 million of new philanthropy. That is just a staggering number.
Pledge 1% has published a comprehensive CEO equity playbook, which includes the best practices, templates, and tools, and everything you need to take the equity pledge today. You can read more about this and download the playbook here.
Thank you again for joining us today to celebrate the 2020 Cloud 100. To our judges, to our sponsors, our fantastic speakers, and the team that helped put this event together, we also want to say a big congratulations from all of us.
To all of our cloud founders and CEOs who made the 2020 list,
congratulations on all of your success.